Hey, folks, we can already feel it in the air. So why shouldn't the football just fall in line? It's spring. I don't expect it to stay around, but hey, enjoy it while it's here and enjoy the football and the football reporting. Pull up a chair, next 60 minutes with these two. We'll see if Kevin's going to stop by as well. Steve Hellwagon, Bucknuts 247 Sports, the place to catch Steve on a daily basis. And of course, Tony Gerdeman, Buckeye Huddle, and also Buckeye Weekly's the podcast that you want to make a date with more than weekly, of course.
Of course.
All right, guys, how are we doing today?
Doing great.
This may look a little funky for a second here. I just don't like throwing. There we go. Let's do that. I guessed right. All right, good to see you guys. Let's dive into it because Tuesday was a big day with everybody back on the field. So much anticipation, so much expectation and hype surrounding this team. But that next rep, that's what it's all about, and not thinking about what's going to happen in November. And Steve, we'll start with you because we got to hear from one Chip Kelly for the first time in particular.
Oh, yeah. Yesterday was just kind of a landmark day in terms of, what we saw for Ohio State football. Hey, there's Big Kev. There he
Kevin
is.
wanted to take over the show there for a second.
I was Ann B. Davis in the Brady Bunch right there in the center square.
It was a clumsily constructed Brady Bunch formation there, but we got it worked out.
Yep. So yesterday was a big day, the first day of spring practice, the first day for the early enrolling freshmen to be on the field, the first day for the blue chip transfers to be on the field. First time the Ohio State media has had a chance to interview Chip Kelly since he made the unthinkable decision to walk away from a Big Ten head coaching position at UCLA to become the offensive coordinator and basically make 40% of his salary coming to Ohio State. And, there's so many different directions we can take this in the course of this hour, but I guess start with his rationale. He said he got to coach the quarterbacks for UCLA during the bowl preparation for Boise State because his quarterbacks coach left for Oregon State to be the offensive coordinator. And he said that really rejuvenated him. His wife noticed that he was happy all of a sudden. And he was very humorous in his 25-minute report yesterday with the media. And, I think that he and Ryan Day are simpatico, and they want to chase a national championship ring together. And moreover, UCLA did not, have any kind of a plan, it felt like, in his mind, to compete at the Big Ten level and invest in the program to the level that they needed to be. Lost their defensive coordinator to crosstown rival USC in a bidding war. So I think he just figured it was time for him to get off that head coaching merry-go-round and do something a little bit different. And he was out there running around coaching the quarterbacks yesterday at Ohio State. If you didn't know it, you wouldn't have believed it. I'll say that. But that was probably one big thing. I'll let these guys probably have so much that they want to delve into, but Kelly was one of the big stories. Injuries, Sonny Styles, quarterbacks, freshmen, transfers, all kinds of storylines.
I find it funny real quick before Tony goes, because I've never been around Chip Kelly, but I know people that have on a fairly regular basis. And the comment about what his wife had to say, is there something wrong? You're happy all of a sudden, like that rarely happens, like maybe once every 10 years or something.
Damning with faint praise. Yeah.
On yesterday's Buckeye Weekly podcast, we actually kind of talked about Chip Kelly. This was not the Chip Kelly we had been led to believe existed, in terms of, we thought there were so many people talking about, he's a curmudgeon and things like that. And I couldn't have been further from the truth yesterday. And just watching him even before practice, he's running around, having a good time, joking with people, joking with Tim Walton, joking with Caleb Downs. I saw at one point before practice, like maybe during stretching or some point, he sees John Cooper like 40 yards away, and he runs over to Coop, and they share a hug, and just, he was having a grand old time there. And you could see some of the burden of, not the burden, but the freedom to be coaching again. And I talk about it all the time. When you talk to head coaches and you ask them what do they miss about being an assistant coach, they tell you they miss coaching. And he found that love again, as Steve said, during the bowl game. And so there are a few better places to go and coach offense than Ohio State. So it was just interesting. He was a high energy guy yesterday, having fun, trading barbs with players and coaches and things like that. So that's probably how it is for a lot of guys on the first day of spring. The 19th day of August might be a little bit different, though.
The dog days, yeah.
Yeah, something that stood out to me from Chip Kelly's comments were he said that he'd had conversations with other current head coaches out there, and they said, I'm like 2 years behind you, brother, about, maybe, remaining in coaching, but not being a head coach and being able to focus on, what side of the ball or position group or what have you, getting back to the point that was made by both Steve and Tony of maybe not having to deal with all of the rigmarole that goes around being a head coach that takes you away from the actual coaching responsibilities as my animals are fighting with each other. So I'll be short in my comments. Keep an eye on Chip Kelly trying to get Caleb Downs over to the offensive side of the ball. That's not going to happen, mind you, but he certainly joked about going shopping on the defensive side of the ball. It's like, I could use you, and I could really use you, and I could use you. So that was fun. And just to kind of wrap up the Chip Kelly portion, we're going to have a lot of new lines to learn because you sit there and you cover a coach for years and years, and you kind of have heard all of the stories, but we heard about the annexation of Puerto Rico. We heard about Alexander Haig, a lot of things right there that maybe some of the younger viewers out there won't know right off
John
the top
Lennon.
of their head. Yes, a great John Lennon story. But for some of us old salty vets, it was enjoyable hearing some new lines.
I haven't heard the name Alexander Haig for a month or two or 1,000. Wow. Okay. Don't know where he would have connected that one. John Lennon. Yeah. You hear that name from time to time, but interesting. Yeah. He's an interesting character, and you guys already stated it, but I'll just underline it that I think he's just, I can coach football. I don't have the burden of, I have to meet with all of you and this 5-3 record, 5-6 record, whatever it is hanging over my head. And that's what I'm being hit with. Nope. I can go coach ball. And by the way, with maybe the best offense in the country. So,
yeah, I did like some of the other things he talked about where, people are like, it's head coaches aren't supposed to become offensive coordinators on their own, make on their own decision. And his quote was, I do a lot of things that other people don't do. And that's exactly right. That's what that says. That's Chip Kelly pretty much in a barrel right there, because he's been a trendsetter. He's been an innovator. And this is part of a burgeoning trend as well. I think he also had the line of the day when he said, when he was asked, did you think about quitting UCLA and just not coaching? He said, I never thought about quitting or not coaching. I'm going to coach, and then I'm going to die. And that's about as good of a coach line as you can have. And like I said, you can just see he's just happy to be back coaching position. And the John Lennon quote was about John Lennon as a kid talking about, I want to be happy when I grow up. And that's Chip Kelly talking about, I just want to be happy. And he sure seemed happy yesterday.
I understand there was another coach that spoke yesterday. This Ryan Day guy, he also was able to speak. So, Tony, we'll stay with you in regards to your impressions about what he had to say about Chip and other topics.
It was interesting because, I think Chip was in there for the entire room. I think Kevin said that, just telling me yesterday, Chip was in there during Ryan's press conference listening. And so, you've got the mentor watching the mentee, who is now the mentor to the mentee, and the relationship that they have. But overall, you're trying to get football stuff out of Day, and it's like, well, it's just practice one. And how do you get everybody reps? And how do you get the quarterbacks reps? And the interesting thing from that was, they got the top three guys probably the same amount of reps, and the freshmen got fewer reps. But overall, like, it was we're asking him personnel stuff like Luke Montgomery's at right guard right now, and they feel pretty good about it, and they'll probably keep him there for the bulk of spring, and then come up afterwards and see how it went. Just his overall assessment of the team is that it's very talented, but the focus yesterday was the non-talent things, the no talent things, the effort and discipline and things like that. Because he said everybody's got talent. It's what separates you, what wins games, is the no talent issues of discipline and hustle and hard work and things like that.
We all want to talk to the head coach after the first practice, but there's really not much decided at that point. Ryan, are you ready to name a starting quarterback? No. I mean, we could go through all these permutations of how the lineup could look and everything else, and it's just one practice in, no pads, no nothing. Guys are learning how to line up. I mean, it's a matter of trying to make sure that your first-year players, whether or not they be coming out of the high school ranks or veteran grad transfers, kind of understand how to practice the way that Ohio State goes through its practice. But yeah, you get energized by the energy, getting back out there. I mean, obviously the last thing on field was not very good, something that people will have already blocked out of their memories, a certain Cotton Bowl defeat. But then you get out there and you get some wind in your sails. You get the opportunity to see some of these guys. I mean, this isn't the Urban era of where Coach Mick hands over the keys to the team or anything like that, but you get the opportunity you get the reports from the strength and conditioning staff, but now you really get to kind of get out there and coach these guys and see what your freshman quarterback looked like, see what Jeremiah Smith looks like at wide receiver, see some of these types of things. And honestly, we kind of went through this song and dance last year of how Ryan Day was going to be more of a CEO coach, and we were going to have, the offense was going to be more in the hands of Brian Hartline, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, this year, I think we finally are getting to that point now that Chip Kelly is there to kind of run the offense, somebody who has volumes and volumes of coaching experience, and that's going to allow Ryan Day to be able to spend time in other sections, even though his wandering eye probably will keep going back and looking at quarterbacks, no matter how much he says it isn't.
Yeah, I obviously many of the things that I looked at yesterday, we weren't there for actual football. It was warm-ups and all these other things, so it was just kind of the getting started part of the football practice and individual drills, no 11 on 11 or those kind of things. So it's really hard to make a determination if somebody is this good of a football player or that guy can do this or that. But having said that, very impressed with a lot of the newcomers. Caleb Downs looked like Mike Doss reincarnated at wearing his number 2 white jersey at safety. Jeremiah Smith was warming up with 2 walk-ons where he had his hand on each guy's shoulder and was like swinging his leg to limber up his leg. And those guys looked like they were like 5'6", and he's like towering over these guys at like 6'3", 215. And I made a comment, they look like David Boston in David Boston's junior year, when he was stacked and racked and stacked and ready to go to the NFL. So if he can play anywhere close to what David Boston did as a freshman, then they're in for some just amazing returns from him. So those were 2 guys that jumped off the page at me. Julian Sayin, it's a little bit jarring to watch him drop back and throw the ball left-handed because that's a new wrinkle, for Ohio State to have a lefty, maybe back a few years to maybe even Steve Bellisario, I don't know. And then also Aaron Noland, I'm getting it backwards. Aaron Noland is the left-hander and Sayin is the right-hander. Apologize. My memory is not the greatest. What was interesting was the very first snap those 2 guys took under center side by side, they both fumbled it. And it was like fumble, like it happened within a second of one another. And it was just like, you really do start, these 5-star blue chip guys really do start from the batter's box, running down the first baseline. No one is born on third base. in the game of college football. And particularly when you're practicing against 22 and 23, 24-year-old grown men with all the guys who stuck around, they're going to find out what life's all about here probably sooner rather than later.
The big news from the day appears to be the position change for one Sonny Styles, of course, former 5-star, and you guys have speculated about that the entire offseason. Tony, we'll kick it back to you to get us started on this one. But when you arrive at 6'4", 235 and look like a linebacker, and obviously the game has changed in so many ways, but that's been one of the big questions of the offseason. What do we do with this guy to maximize that enormous talent?
Yeah, and that was the first thing I was looking for when I walked into practice. I was looking for the position groups and looking for the linebackers, and then I saw him over there. And I mean, we got the rosters before practice, and it said 6'4", 235, and it's like, well, if he's getting bigger, he's not going to be, he's going to be moving down in terms of the position. And so, he was repping, I think, with the 2s at the will behind CJ Hicks, and your first practice at that position, you're probably going to be behind some guys, and it'll be an interesting competition to watch between those two. And I don't know that you necessarily need one winner over the other, because they both have some versatility that they can do different things. And Ryan Day did say, yeah, Sonny, you're going to see him at linebacker, but you're also going to see him some other places as well this season. So last year, Jim Knowles was using spring to experiment on what they can do with Sonny. This year, they'll be using spring to experiment on what they can do with Sonny. And with that kind of versatility and his ability, there's a lot that you can do. But eventually, you've got to figure out what you're going to do. You've got to know what you're going to do so that he can do it. You can't just keep experimenting. Eventually, you got to put all of this into place and get it done. And I don't think there's any concerns there. But yeah, that's I think that's the only big position move that we've seen. And again, this was kind of expected.
Yeah, I agree with Tony that one of the first things I was looking for is where Sonny was at. And you go through the roster and you look for number changes. And then once you go through, jersey number changes, you start looking at position changes and heights and weights and differences there. And I certainly can remember going through the years of maintaining rosters at a previous stop of where a guy goes from 6'2" to 6'3 to 6'2 to 6'3 over his 4 years. I guess it just depends on who's measuring that specific year. But, it'll be interesting to see what Sonny at linebacker means. What does that end up meaning for somebody like CJ Hicks? Because, I mean, do you as spring goes on and you're in the laboratory and you're experimenting, do you try sliding him down into like a stand-up rush end? I mean, what do you do at that point? I mean, we're one practice in, and now we suddenly, we've got all of these ideas, all these things that we want to see them do. And, thankfully we're back at practice tomorrow, but we're going to see, as Steve said, stretching and punt and some things like that. So we're not going to know much until we know anything. And just for anybody expecting to really see behind the curtain at the spring game, we're not going to see behind the curtain at that point. Maybe they do try a couple things out. Maybe you put some things that weren't as successful out there, because all your opponents are going to watch your spring game or whatever, just to put something on tape, just so it's something in the back of their mind. I mean, I'm much more willing to put that type of stuff out there than the stuff I'm willing to use. I would rather keep that under wraps until it is time to debut it.
Yeah, Sonny, I'll just throw in, the key to him, and I've said this since he was a sophomore in high school at Pickerington Central, when you're that big, that strong, you need to be close to the line of scrimmage. That way you can impact more plays. In high school, he probably was only involved in about 15% of the plays. Just didn't have the kind of impact that you would think somebody of that immense athletic ability would have. And it's not a fault of his. He was stationed 15 yards off the ball. And if they went to the other side or went underneath, it didn't involve him. So he was only involved if a running play got out the gate or if somebody tried to throw down the middle of the field in his direction. And that was it. And I for the longest time, I just thought he was miscast. And I think they won the state championship his sophomore year with he and his brother. And I don't think they won it either of his last 2 years. And I think part of that was because he was just out of position. In fact, I know they didn't win it the last 2 years. They lost to St. X his junior year, and then lost to Upper Arlington in the regional finals his senior year, I believe. So I just – and obviously he played a little bit, as an early enrolling freshman. He reclassified, and so he really wasn't pressed into service. But last year he played quite a bit at safety. He did reasonably well, but then you see in the bowl game he gets, victimized on some quarterback run, sucked inside, didn't play as contained like he was supposed to, et cetera. And you're just kind of like, what do we have here? And so he's going to get the opportunity to learn linebacker this spring. And I don't know if it was him or somebody else. All they're doing is lining up yesterday. They lined up 11 on 11. They took a snap and everybody took 3 steps. There's no football involved. It was just, there was a football on the field, but it was just snapped. And then everybody took 3 steps. And I could just hear Jim Knowles in the background just bellowing, "Big gap, big gap." Somebody on just the most rudimentary thing that you could possibly do as a defensive player didn't know where they were supposed to be. And he's back there screaming. I don't think it was Sonny. It could have been anybody. But that's just an example that it's just not as simple as, okay, he's 6'4", he's 235 pounds, he's got great athletic ability. This is a can't-miss situation. He's going to be an All-American. Well, if he doesn't trigger and he doesn't make plays, he's not an All-American, and they don't win the national championship. So, and I don't want to pin it entirely on him, but you get what I'm saying. It's like it's just not because of A, you're going to have result B. It just doesn't work like that. He's got to go in there and learn the position as if it's brand new, and it's going to be a tough one. But we'll see how he comes out the other side.
It's all about buy-in, and you got to have multiple parties all buying in on a position change or things like that. The coaches have to want it, the player has to want it, and the family has to want it. And if one part of that isn't there, then it's not going to work. And it seems like everything has aligned at this point, and we can sit there and say that spring is an experiment or not, but spoiler alert, this is a real position change. And I think that it's going to be for the betterment of the team. It's going to be for the betterment of Sonny. I don't see any losers in this situation except for maybe CJ Hicks, who appeared to be the heir apparent to that vacant linebacker position. If Sonny locks it down out there with Cody Simon, then how do you get CJ Hicks out there as, he sits another year and is kind of, hitting that glass ceiling. And we know that Ryan Day said prior to spring practice, we want to play more players. It's going to be a long season, et cetera, et cetera. I also want to sit there and eat my vegetables and take my vitamins. It doesn't mean I'm doing it. It sounds good in theory. In actual execution, when life is going on, it doesn't necessarily happen. I'm going to sit there and drink beer and fall asleep on the sofa. So I just don't. I'll believe some of this when I see it, but the Sonny move is real. It's something that had been percolating in the shadows for a while, and it was good that they just rolled it out here for everybody to see day one. And they didn't do some cloak and dagger thing of where for the first 4 periods of spring practice, he was back there with the safeties, usher the media out, and now we can go forward and let's, keep everybody, talking about it and make it a giant distraction. Not as much of a distraction as Arch Manning being in NC2A football 2025, but don't get me started on that one.
We'll come back to that.
Follow my hand. Everything I care about that. You see it right there. I have a life. Don't care about NCAA football 24, 25, 28, 13, 17.
Go to bed, old man.
No F's to give on that.
Too, Steve.
Okay, boomers.
But Steve, Kevin, if you want another platform, hey, we'll give you your 5 minutes or whatever you want.
Before we move to that, I will say James Laurinaitis talked when we talked to him when he got the job fully a couple weeks ago, said he should have played Cody Simon more. So at least he has that experience of I should have done something, and now this year I have an opportunity. Like if CJ Hicks and Sonny Styles both earn the playing time, he can look back on last year's and say, you know, I know I should have done it last year. I have an opportunity to do it this year. But like Kevin said, when a game is going on and it's still a 7-point game, like coaches are so reticent to go ahead and put somebody else in. They need their best players because they can lose a game on any moment. So I think you've just got to make sure your guys are good enough and that you can trust them. And he talked about rolling guys like Brian Hartline does. And it's different with receivers because if a linebacker runs 70 yards or 50 yards, they're probably going to sit out that next snap anyway. Like receivers are doing this. Linebackers, they don't necessarily have to run that much and then come out. So you kind of just have to find time to bring guys out. And Cody Simon, I think they had a good mix there towards the end of the season. The second half of the season, he would come in for Steel Chambers. And of course, you know, Tommy Eichenberg gets hurt. So he steps in there. I think there's a way to do it without requiring an injury to get it done. And some of that may be the jack position again, if they want to ever bring that back, because I think both of those guys would be good candidates for that, for what it's supposed to do. So I think there's enough snaps. And if it's over the course of 16 games, even if there's only 25 snaps in one game, eventually you're going to be playing a bunch at some point. So they should be okay with it. And Sonny's a guy who has been substituted out already in his career and has been started 12 games last year, but would come out on passing downs when he was at nickel. CJ Hicks has never played, so I'm sure he'd be happy to get half of the snaps at will, you know?
Well, like you guys say, and Kevin said most notably, people want information, people demand information, and it's one day of practice, and it's just going to take a while, and you guys are only subject to so much. Although I would expect that all of you guys had your stopwatches ready for those 3-step takes off the line of scrimmage to let us know, you know, who's getting off that ball quick.
I can eyeball it. I'm okay.
Oh.
I was just happy where they put the quarterbacks. That's maybe burying the lead there. Normally they put the quarterbacks out in Gahanna, and we can't see them. They're so far away from us. They were front and center for us. So, you know, for whatever reason, being practice one, they had them right there. We got to see Aaron Noland throw on some wheel routes, you know, against air, but not literally against air, but, you know, against oxygen. And, you know, that was nice. So we're getting to see the bits and pieces, but we're certainly, you know, it's a very incomplete data at this point. And, you know, that's what I look forward to spring and having to kind of, you know, dig around and try and make some conclusions. And what I mean to do every year is make my spring conclusions, and then after the end of the season, go and see how many of them I was right on. And I don't know what a good percentage would be. 50%, you know, 80%. I mean, are we talking about baseball where if you're 3 out of 10 that you're a Hall of Famer, or are we talking about a situation of where it's like shooting free throws? And if you're under 85%, I mean, get your butt back in the gym.
All depends on how much of a limb you want to go out on. If you just want to tell us that Trey'veon Henderson looks good and I think he's going to have a nice season, well, okay, you're gonna hit 80%.
That's the kind of stuff Tony does.
Well, hey, I'll tell you
the mildest of bold predictions, Tony Gurley.
No, come on. I will say Trey'veon Henderson down 4 pounds from last year, so he's going to be faster, no doubt.
Faster. Well, last year I was impressed because he was lowering his shoulder and became a muscle runner, a power back.
He looked like he had great burst yesterday. You know, obviously no pads on and no contact, but they were working on taking handoffs and accelerating, and he looked like he was accelerating at a high rate of speed. I reflect back last week, we're at the combine, and at least 2 different players mentioned him as a guy that they played against who they respected and, you know, ability. Notre Dame was one of them, one of their players, and either a Penn State or a Michigan player also mentioned him. So, yeah, he got some props from folks at the combine last week, and including from Mayan Williams, who said he expected Trey'veon Henderson to be there with him. Trey'veon on Monday told a story about how he was at church during the bowl trip, if this sounds right, and with G. Scott, and he had an epiphany, I guess, at some point in there, and said, "I'm coming back to Ohio State." So, and he told G. Scott right on that spot. So, yeah, that was kind of an interesting human interesty type story that, he thinks he's got more. He's not threatened by Quinshon Judkins, who looked great yesterday as well, being there, and says it's a good situation. So that was amazing. That was the very first question that Henderson got the other day was, "What do you think about being part of a tandem?" And he's like, "Hey, I'm good with it." So, for a guy that missed 3 games last year because, whatever happened in the Notre Dame game, I think he realizes that, to take 25 carries a game ain't all it's cracked up to be sometimes. So, if he can split the load, maybe they'll both get to the finish line. And again, maybe they'll win the national championship. I know long way to go between now and then.
Well, and Trey'veon Henderson's never had a problem with sharing load. It's just so much of the careers of Mayan Williams and Trey'veon Henderson, it's rare that they were both healthy in the same game.
Yeah.
So whether Henderson would miss games or Williams would miss games, remember he came into the class with Evan Pryor. Evan Pryor was committed before Henderson. And so he was completely okay with that. So it doesn't shock me that he is still okay with that. And it certainly doesn't shock me that Quinshon Judkins is like, I don't need to carry the ball 30 times a game anymore. I'm good, letting somebody else help me out. And Henderson was repping first, and Judkins was repping second, and then Dallin Hayden, and then James Peoples, and then Sam Williams-Dixon when we saw them. Steve, you mentioned David Boston as a junior last year. I do remember David Boston coming in at 6'3", 205. He was listed like that as a sophomore as well, because I just looked. As a junior, David Boston, 6'3", 215. As a true freshman, Jeremiah Smith, 6'3", 215.
Yep,
So,
very similar. Very similar. And he just looked the part. I mean, what can you say? And again, when you put shoulder pads on, full pads on, it's going to be playing actual football. And we'll see how some of these freshmen do. I don't think they want to just drop them into the deep end of the pool and see if they can sink or swim. But we saw last spring, you were already getting a sense with guys like, some of those guys, those early enrolling freshmen that really could make plays. So I guess we'll see as this spring wears on. I mean, we're going to get to watch a full practice, it sounds like, at the end of March. And maybe, I don't know, is that 2 or 3 weeks from this Saturday, they're having, I presume, the open practice for the students 2 weeks before the spring game. And we'll be able to check that out. So, looking forward to that.
What did David Boston weigh when he was with the Chargers in that one picture when he had the
like 230 probably?
I was going to say it was more than 215, but to make a final point on the running backs, Ohio State's running back room isn't as deep in some regards as it's been in previous years. I mean, it's very top heavy with Henderson and Judkins. Dallin Hayden, much to the chagrin of everybody, has not had as much run as people would like to see. And then you've got two true freshmen. So you have these top 2 backs, and if they, in any combination total 30 carries between them, and then everything else kind of goes beyond, but it's a lot of football to be played. And Trey'veon Henderson, certainly in being very physical and everything else, has been dinged up at various points of his career. So Ohio State absolutely needed to make a move like that. I mean, did the addition of Quinshon Judkins in the equation really kind of have Chip Trayanum move to Kentucky? I mean, I think Ohio State needed somebody who was a little bit more of a every down productive back then, and that's not taking anything away from Chip, but Chip was kind of third fiddle to Trey and to Mayan, because once you get past the top 2, you get to Dallin, who seems to have a lot of talent, and then you got 2 true freshmen who don't know what they don't know.
There is possibly your number 1 transfer portal candidate after the spring. How much interest would there be in Dallin Hayden?
How bad would it hurt Ohio State if it lost Dallin Hayden?
All right, folks, appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. These three get together with me each and every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, so we appreciate them taking time out of their busy schedule. Let's hit a super chat. We've got one particular topic there that's been brought up as well in the chat we will hit on, and of course, we want to hear from Kevin concerning this EA Sports fiasco. Yakov, what you got for us? We've got... Key to a championship is roster full of third-round juniors.
I think I don't know if that's in JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer, probably have better prospects than that, but there is something to that because you've got Michigan being full of like 5th round, 6th round, 4th round seniors and taking that to a title. But again, I think it's important to note that last year was arguably the worst collection of great teams, of the best teams that we've seen in quite some time. And so, yes, it is a completely invalid championship. I think we would all agree with that. But there's definitely the veterans that Ohio State has, and whether they're second, third day, first day, they just, as Ryan Day said, you just don't want to waste it. You want to do all of the things that doesn't require talent to make that talent even better.
Kevin, go ahead.
What's that, Steve?
I didn't know if Kevin had anything to add to that. I was just going to say, it's kind of dismissing some of those guys. I mean, yeah, they might be third round picks or middle round picks, some of them who came back, but as of today, but they can play their way up, with a good senior year. There's a lot of them. I mean, I don't think Denzel Burke by any stretch of the imagination is a third round pick. There's a lot of guys there that can work their way up with a great year in 2024, and they're all going to be, they're all going to be highlighted to that point. So I look forward to it this fall, just to see how these guys. It sounds like, and this was what Ryan Day said, it's the most professional locker room outside of the NFL that he's ever been a part of. And I think that's going to go a long way toward what this team's ultimate destiny is going to be.
Yeah, you bring in kids every year. I mean, that's just how college football works. But when you have such a strong core of players who've been to the fair and seen the bear and everything else, and this stuff isn't necessarily new to them, and understand what it's like to be in high leverage situations and everything else. I mean, you bring your kids along faster because the coaches get so much time with them, but you're with, peer leadership means so much, and who it is that you buddy up with, and everybody has kind of like a little brother. I mean, it's kind of like a fraternity, big brother, little brother. And when you have guys that don't know what they're doing as a big brother, and it's like, well, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I mean, I was going to ask you. But when you have guys who do know what they're doing, I think that it just really creates a strong locker room culture. And I think that this is going to be a team. We've seen Ohio State kind of dip down in the number of captains that it's had. This year, it's either going to be the most competitive captain race we've ever seen, or we're going to see the number multiplied by a factor of 2 or 3.
Devin Brown apparently responded to the tweet/X post that he put out the other day that said, quote, "I think people are cowards. These people live in their mom's basement, saying something about me, and they don't know shit." Talking about transferring. And I think he was given the floor to respond to that, correct?
And what? I'm sorry.
And he also has responded to what that meant.
I mean, I thought it was obviously, a great quote. Unfortunately, when they have 3 tables, that was not the table I was at. I got to hear it after the fact. I did watch the video of it and everything else. I guess I did have a camera there, but I was at another table. I mean, there's certainly everybody has, I've read on social over under on quarterbacks to transfer coming out of the spring and everything else. And Devin Brown has certainly taken some slings and arrows from people who mocked the burn the ships and everything else. And now that Ohio State has gone out and got itself a pair of super talented freshmen and a veteran quarterback who has won a lot of games at Kansas State, and everybody's ready to kind of force him out. But I do take offense about talking about living in your mother's basement. Like some of our best technology has come around from people that live in their mother's basement. I do not live in my mother's basement, but I felt that it was something that he needed to say, he wanted to say, and he got the message out there. And I guarantee you, it made a lot of telecasts because we all want to sit there and handicap these quarterback races and everything else, and we all think we should be able to name a starter after practice one. Devin's like, don't forget about me. I'm still here. It was not a great situation in the Cotton Bowl when he gets injured. We don't really know what Ohio State has there. So we'll just kind of go on.
I say credit to him for having the character, I guess, to answer those comments. And people, who are anonymous on message boards and on Twitter, can say whatever they want without any kind of repercussions. I don't look at it that anybody, and perhaps I'm wrong, if anybody in the media has written him off. I think it's pretty obvious that Will Howard was their handpicked guy to come in and, with 90% probability be the starter. I think that is a pretty fair assessment of the situation. And the onus is now on Devin Brown to lift his level of play commensurate with a guy who, won a Big 12 championship 2 years ago. I mean, we haven't seen that level of play from Devin Brown. Of course, we haven't had the opportunity to see that level of play from Devin Brown. So we don't know what we don't know about him. I mean, just little drips and drabs here, kind of the novelty running quarterback on the goal line. I mean, what do we really know about him? We really don't know much. He made one big deep ball throw to the freshman last year. And I don't know. I mean, we really don't know. Consistency is the hallmark of, greatness. And he's never been on the field long enough to develop any kind of consistency. I mean, injured last spring, injured midseason, injured again midseason, injured in the bowl game, 4 injuries. And, got to be on the field to produce and earn a job. So that's going to be his thing, is to get through these 15 days, play his best football, and let the chips fall where they may. And that's kind of where it is for Lincoln Kienholz, who's in the same boat. And certainly Will Howard, I asked Chip Kelly how he thought Will Howard, as a veteran, was assimilating, and he thought he's been great, coming in and trying to be a leader. And, it's kind of hard to, when you're cast as, the savior at quarterback, to come in and be a follower and a leader all at the same time. Am I supposed to lead today, or am I, just falling in line as one of the new guys today? That's a tough line, in a locker room of alpha males. How do you walk that line? But, we saw Justin Fields did it 4 years ago, and now we're seeing apparently Will Howard is kind of bridging that gap as well. So to me, Devin Brown is in this competition, and again, they're going to play the guy who they think gives them the best chance to beat Michigan, Penn State, Oregon. That's who's going to play. And only the coaches know in their heart, in their minds. Chip Kelly said there will be no premature announcement that somebody is the starter. It'll be organic. It'll happen when it happens. And he said you can't cheat the process, and you can't hoodwink the players. The players are at practice every day, and they know who should be the starter. And if you put somebody else in that job, they're not going to get the following they need to be successful. So it creates a divisive environment. So to me, it's all going to work out in the end. And I keep every one of my segments on the show, and if it works out, they'll win the national championship. Same thing. If it works out, they're going to be right there in late January, wherever the hell the fifth playoff, wherever the hell the 11th playoff game will be played. So there you go.
I wrote a column this morning about fans, media, people, let's not push quarterbacks into the portal, and let's just let them process it their own way. And Devin Brown can talk about the people in their basements, but when he's being surrounded by reporters and they're asking, are you transferring? Are you sure you're not going to transfer? And Lincoln Keenel's asked to answer the same questions about, if you don't win this job, are you transferring? Like their thought is in winning the job. And I think there's no reason for us to put it out there to them like, hey, why haven't you transferred yet? Like Devin Brown, you lost a job to Kyle McCord and they brought in Will Howard. Why are you still here? Like, are you stupid? And the idea that guys can't just be given an opportunity and take that opportunity, make the most of that opportunity. And then if it doesn't work out for them, they decide they have to leave. Fine, fantastic. That's what it's there for. I'm over pushing guys into the portal, especially before spring has even started. Like a practice hasn't even started and the quarterbacks are being asked if they're transferring. And I think it's time to just let quarterbacks be a little bit. And yeah, we're all going to talk about it. The quarterbacks are completely different. And I wrote about that. Like, yes, quarterbacks are different, but also let's just let them try to win a job. And then when they don't win it, then we can talk about it because nothing has been started yet for this quarterback job. And so, Devin Brown says what he says. Some Buckeye fans love it. Some people are like, no, that Tate Martell said the same thing. And there's some truth to that. But, I'm willing to allow Devin Brown to make his own decision. I don't need to kick him in the ass on the way in.
Steve, whenever you need to check out, we appreciate you being here as always. So just do whatever
Yep,
you
got a
need to
family
do.
thing. My father-in-law, it's his birthday today, so we're going to Cap City and have lunch today. Going to have the meatloaf. There you go.
Enjoy your nap.
Best meatloaf in town with the mashed potatoes, the barbecue gravy,
lunch beers,
broccoli, and the onion straws on top. That's how you live right there. I won't even need to eat dinner after that.
Nice.
So
right,
yeah, I will see you all next week. Great talking. Yep.
All right. I wanted to hit this real quick because Mika brought it up and a number of people in the chat. Chad Lindberg is a 2020 commit and signee and player at Georgia, was a top 50 player in the state of Texas, offensive tackle, top 33 according to the composite at the time. I don't think he's played, not that I'm an expert on Georgia's roster, but I work with it enough that I think I would recognize his name if he's been playing at Georgia. But people are asking about him because he has entered the transfer portal. Anything there?
I don't believe he's ever started a game because I remember looking at the name last week because I know anytime an offensive lineman enters the portal, Ohio State fans are like, we should get that guy because he'd be better than what we have. And, like I said, I went through last week and I didn't see, I haven't looked at his Georgia bio or anything like that. But in the last 2 years, no starts. I doubt there's anything before that as well. So, like, if you're not good enough to start at Georgia, are you good enough to start? Where are you going to start? And so I don't get too hung up on stuff like that. I prefer playing time experience like that. So I don't have anything good to say about it because like I said, Georgia's offensive lines have not been fantastic. So if you're not cracking that, then I think there's perhaps a reason he's transferring.
Yeah, I've got his bio up here right now, and he, according to this, played in 12 games on the offensive line in 23, saw reserve action in 6 games in 22 and 4 games in 21, but he's not been able to, crack the main. I mean, nowhere in there did it say starts, and I understand everybody is out there looking for somebody because, as Tony put it, they got to be better than what's here. And, to that extent, there were a lot of misses under Greg Studrara in terms of recruiting, and Ohio State is still trying to reshape its line. But I think if you're an Ohio State fan, what you need to be hoping for, and I'm not here to tell people what to think, except Tony, what you should be hoping for is that Ohio State has the pieces already on its roster, people that have already been in the system who aren't going to have to sit there and spend the summer catching up and everything else. And in some degrees, football is football, but there are a lot of different strategies and ways to go about things in terms of how your offensive line works. If Ohio State gets out of spring ball and is not happy with the pieces that it has, then look for Ohio State to be active trying to find somebody else. But I think it's a win if Ohio State is able to find a situation within its own personnel to be able to field a line of 5 offensive linemen that can get the job done and have enough depth to have a 6th and 7th offensive lineman as well. I mean, and I think that's about all you can ask for.
We have an addition here at the Voice of College Football, going to provide some content for us on a regular basis. So we're happy to present Jonathan Rhodes. Just call him JR. JR, it's great to see you. Thanks for being here. And just wanted to introduce you to Tony and Kevin and everybody else here. Now, Jonathan's not going to be on this show because if we only had 4 spots, I'd probably get the boot. So, but JR is going to be producing some content here at the Voice of College Football for Ohio State. So, JR, how you doing today?
I'm good. I'm happy to report I'm not in my mom's basement. I don't live there, and I'm feeling good. So,
okay, you've doctored it up well behind you to fool us anyway. So I don't know whether we can believe you or not, but we'll take your word for it. So JR, what do you have working out there? I know you got the Big Ten show.
Yep. Got the Big Ten huddle. I do. There's another other shows and things like that I pop on. I've been on the Voice of College Football with actually John Diadamo over at the Michigan channel once or twice, and actually done some stuff over there. Well, I guess it was the Big Ten. It was the Ocho show with him, wasn't it? I'd done that before with him, and if anybody knows Sonny, their Big Ten show, I do some work with him and Justin from the Nebraska channel over there. So I'm doing all kinds of stuff, pretty much anything Big Ten football related. That's stuff I'm doing. But my show is called the Big Ten Huddle. You can go check it out. It's on YouTube, almost close to 1,000 subscribers, so we're excited about that. But yeah, go check it out. We're excited about it.
You may want to take about 18 minutes and read JR's all of his bio listings down below. I couldn't fit them all on there, but we had to add content creator here at the Voice of College Football on the Ohio State channel going forward. So JR, before we say goodbye and let you get on with your day, I know that this one's been kicked around social media as it is each and every offseason. So I'm going to hit you with the Mount Rushmore of Ohio State football.
Well, my biggest thing with that is everybody always does offensive players. And if you know the history of Ohio State, you know you need some defensive players in there as well. So I actually go 2 offensive, 2 defensive, no quarterbacks actually. I go Archie Griffin, James Laurinaitis, Ted Ginn Jr., and Joey Bosa. Joey Bosa, I have an affinity for Joey Bosa that I don't know if anybody else has him on my Mount Rushmore, but I can't get over the 2014 season. I love me some Bosa.
Go, Tony, on that one.
I think AJ
Tony's gonna have. Sorry, Tony.
Well,
I know one person that you're gonna have. Definitely, he wears the numbers in the 70s and he played in the 90s. That I'm almost positive.
Well,
Tony's gonna have there.
Well, and the thing is, when I do my Mount Rushmore, it's Orlando Pace, it's Archie Griffin, it is Chick Harley, and then I don't know who to put fourth. And so, if we're just doing defense, I think Antoine Winfield is going to be there for me. He's the best defender I've ever seen at Ohio State, the best tackler. But I think you got to throw Chris Spielman in there. If you're talking about James Laurinaitis, 3-time All-American, I think AJ Hawk was better. He just didn't have the accolades. So I mean, there's a number. I think Chase Young's 2019 season was better than any defensive end in Ohio State history. But Joey Bosa kind of started that entire line. I think Nick Bosa, if he had stayed healthy in 2018, would have been fantastic. Willie Cooker's 2016 is the best individual season until Chase Young. So I don't know, Kevin. What do you got?
I mean, I think everybody's going to have their own level of recency bias. I mean, Tony's trying to fight that by having Chick Harley from back in 1955, and and I get that. I mean,
He
Jack
got the
Tatum,
stadium built.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Well, I don't disagree, and I don't think that you can just limit it down to 4 players for Ohio State. And I've seen a lot of people just kind of try and sidestep it by putting Woody Hayes on their on their Mount Rushmore and just say, well, it's because I can't make a decision. But yeah, I mean, not to go against the new guy and sit there and bag on JR, but it's criminal that you don't have Orlando Pace on there. Orlando Pace is by far, in terms of his position and what he was able to do and redefining the position, was the best college football player that I've ever seen in my life. And it certainly doesn't hurt that certainly, I'm 52. That was my era. While I really like what James Laurinaitis did, I think that I could probably come up with 3 or 4 other linebackers that I would probably have higher. I mean, is anybody talking about Eddie George, what Eddie George meant in terms of what his career was? But then again, if I talk to people who are 20 years younger than me, they want to put Zeke Elliott on there. I mean, I don't know.
Ryan Shazier was awesome.
I'm not going to get pinned down on putting 4 faces on the side of a mountain, because I could give you one today, and then you could ask me again tomorrow, and I'd forget who I said today and give you 3 different names on there. I mean, certainly one constant is going to be Orlando Pace.
Well, so maybe instead of a Mount Rushmore, it's like an LED screen, or like a big billboard that just changes every few minutes. Like today's Mount Rushmore are these 4 players, and then you just kind of slide them down a little bit.
Ohio State has had so much success and so many great players through the year. I think that not only do you need an offensive and a defensive Mount Rushmore, to hell with that, you need position group Mount Rushmores where you're taking 4 per position group. And if you don't really want to get too fancy with that, you could just put DBs and D-line together as opposed to having ends and tackles and corners and safeties or whatever. And maybe you throw tight ends in with receivers. And sorry, tight ends, you're probably going to get shut out.
Throw them in with the offensive linemen. You could honestly do positions by decade as well. Like you can break it down like that if you want. There's a lot of rocks around. You can go ahead and carve out.
I have produced a top 10 Ohio State quarterback list. I've never tackled the Mount Rushmore, and I'm with Kevin on that. That is just too difficult for me to.
So who you got? Who you got, Mark? Right now, who you got?
Grind it down to 4. I will say this. This may be blasphemy, so pardon me on this one. But if we're just forget the accomplishments, if we're just talking about the 4 best players in Ohio State history, I don't think Archie Griffin would be on my Mount Rushmore.
I mean, if you look at the numbers, I mean, Antonio Pittman had better numbers a couple of years, one of those years. And Pete Johnson got all the touchdowns. So I'm with you there. But in terms of history, like it's kind of he's a shoe-in. But if you take him off, like come on, Mark, don't tell me who's not on it. Tell me who's on it.
Okay. Who's on it off the top of my head? Wow. I'm going to go Orlando Pace, Randy Gradishar, if we're going to go with a linebacker, and that's a tough choice. And I'm going to go with, I would have to look at wide receiver numbers because what these guys, what the recent guys are doing. But you got to take era into consideration because was anybody better than Chris Carter? And if you adjust, era adjust the numbers, Chris Carter at wide receiver. And I hate to go to the linebacker core again, but Chris Spielman. We haven't said that name. That might be my 4.
See, you guys do it differently than I do. I do it with like the 4 players that I just have the most affinity for for Ohio State that obviously were also really good and beat Michigan. That's one of the reasons why I can't put CJ Stroud on mine, is because he never beat Michigan. He was on the no, he wasn't on the team that year. But yeah, that's how I've always done it. It's just who's like my 4 Ohio State Buckeyes that I have the most affinity for. And obviously, like Kevin said, there's recency bias there.
Oh, well, Art Schleicher is my favorite player in the history of the program, so he's going to be on my Mount Rushmore then, first and foremost. If we're going with affinity. Oh, there's been all sorts of guys that just I like that I just think are cool, like Kenyon Rambo. I'm going to throw him on my Mount Rushmore. I just liked him. Michael Jenkins. Love
Nobody's talked
Michael
about
Jenkins.
Bill Willis. I mean, there are so many players that have been so groundbreaking and everything else that, I mean, again, it is an impossible task. And I really, when I see people post them on X, formerly known as Twitter, I generally try not to comment because I am too cowardly to put my own out there because I'm just not going to. So I try to keep my comments to a minimum because I know that it is a task that I cannot successfully complete.
We left off a few Heisman Trophy winners, Paul Warfield. Yeah, exactly. So we could keep going and going and going. JR, we appreciate you being here. We look forward to seeing your work here at the Voice of College Football, Ohio State. And have a great day, sir.
Thanks, guys. You too.
And Kevin, I don't know if you got a few minutes, but I still want to hear about the EA Sports Arch Manning rant. This was the #1 story on ESPN.com college football the other day, and I slid right past it because I don't care. I don't even know what it's about, except he's not giving them rights, I guess, to use him.
Yeah, and apparently it's because he wants to focus on his on-the-field football because apparently his video game player going out there and having success and being able to rescue the princess from Mario Brothers and everything else in the world of video games would distract him from all of this. I understand that he probably doesn't need the $600 and the free copy of the game, but I think it's either a move of brilliance to put his name back into the news this much because he's not beating Quinn Ewers out for the starting quarterback position at Texas, plain and simple. But this is another cycle that we're talking about Arch Manning, or it's the most short-sighted decision because, I mean, why are you really holding your rights out of it? Is it because you think that you're worth more than $600 in a copy of the video game? What is it at this point? But again, it really feels like Gary Hogaboom not licensing himself to Madden. I mean, who cares? But on the flip side of who cares, I care because I just think that it's a real jackass move.
It is I value my name too much to allow it to appear in a video game. Meanwhile, like Eli and Peyton, their names weren't it. Now you make more for Madden, but it's the thing is the distraction thing is if you don't want to be in the game, that's fine. Don't talk about it being in. To be honest, he was he was not quoted as this. This is somebody reporting saying that he viewed it as a distraction. Meanwhile, you're going to get questions about not being in the game. That's going to be 1,000 times more of a distraction than being in the game ever would have been. So it's not an actual answer. It's just I didn't want to sell my name for $600 because it's worth more than that to me. Because this apparently means something to to allow your license to be in a video game when forever players, we would talk to players a decade ago, said, 5 years ago, I said I would be in it for free. I just want to see myself in a game. And now with the NIL stuff, it's like I value so much of my name and my image and my likeness, and I've begun to overvalue it, and I've gotten too serious with it. And that's to me the silly thing about this is how seriously you take yourself when you're not even willing to do this. And so people just create a quarterback. Now they're going to put in guardrails like you can't create an Arch Manning, but I'm guessing you can create an Archie Manning, or an Archibald Manning or whatever. Or you know what? Do you really need the backup Texas quarterback in the game? Maybe, maybe not.
I'm processing when I have my copy of the game. I'm processing every player who does not opt in unless they really present a valid reason in triplicate to me via certified mail. Because if not, I'm cutting you. I'm just cutting you, and you're out. And I'm going to put in, Bodie McBoatface instead of you because I don't care. Because we have been without this game for too long, and it's bigger than you and your overinflated ego. So get bent.
Does anyone believe with the Manning legacy and estate and all that is as a brand that this young man made this decision, this principled decision on his own? Like he just decided, I'm not going to do this, that he didn't get advice from the brothers, not the brothers, the grandfather and the uncles and the whole deal.
I mean, you're Cooper's kid. You should be thankful for anything you've got.
Well, and the thing is, Cooper is fantastic, by the way, on his TV stuff, but like he's never taken himself. The Mannings don't take themselves seriously, but this is kind of a glimpse behind things. It's like, well, maybe they do, and they sometimes take themselves too seriously. I mean, you remember Arch and Eli getting drafted to, we're not going to go to San Diego or whatever, and like forced some action there. So when they have to, they'll put their foot down. I think this is just a dumb place to do it.
Exactly. That's where I was going next with that. That's only happened twice in the history of the NFL that I can think of. And, not going to the awful San Diego Chargers. That move, well, it worked out. He's got 2 Super Bowl rings.
2 Hall of Famers in that deal. Phillip Rivers too. So
Tony Gerdeman on Buckeye Huddle, Buckeye Weekly. What's going on over there?
Yeah, like I said, I just dropped a column today talking about the quarterbacks and the transfer portal. I may do something with the roster, some news and notes there. I need to probably write up a notebook from yesterday's interviews with some quotes, but we've got tons of video and highlights in terms of practice and interviews and bullet points on what both coaches had to say over at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And like I said, we dropped a podcast yesterday, Buckeye Weekly, all about Chip Kelly and our thoughts and what we saw on day one. So you can find that anywhere and also at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle.
Kevin.
Yesterday, I always try to take the B storyline at first. So I left for Buckeye Weekly, the spring practice and everything there. So today or tomorrow, I will run a Big Me kickoff with my thoughts there. So yesterday I went and Andy Staples of On3 did what a super conferences could look like, 24 teams on either side, went through that, really complained about who he had Ohio State matched up with in its division, the Big Ten West junk drawer and Ohio State. I was very appalled with that, but went through that. But as I said, I will probably do something with my spring thoughts coming up either today or tomorrow, do a live show on Friday where we go through all of your thoughts. And I'll probably have put more thought into the whole Arch Manning thing and may even say more cuss words about what a dumb decision that was.
How does an 8-team division strike you with Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, Purdue, Indiana, Illinois, Northwestern, Notre Dame? How does that strike you?
So no Penn State?
No, Penn State, Maryland, Rutgers, Florida State, I did a configuration of 8-team divisions, and I did a Mid-South Atlantic new Big Ten division, and then the heart of the Big Ten, the Midwest, was the one I just named.
Can we kick Purdue out until their stadium is nicer? Because I just really hate going there.
I don't think, unless you've got more pull than then you could pull in a couple thousand views for this live viewers if you've got that kind of pull. So I don't know if you can do that or not. You're probably going to see them less. Well, probably about the same, I guess, as you guys have seen them in the past, because with this new schedule configuration. All right, guys, appreciate you doing this. You know that. Thank you, guys, everyone watching. Follow Kevin, follow Tony. They do a phenomenal work. We'll see you guys next week.
Sure.